Rebbe, we're on now, and the Alumni is here. It's a good representing of all the 30 years of the yeshiva. We have people from day one, and some people who just recently escaped, and some people even from before day one. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to receive.
Good morning. I hope afterwards I have a chance to talk, whoever would like to talk. Certainly when we finish, entertain any questions, and if anybody wants to talk one-on-one, I'll be more than happy to. I'd like to begin. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we're hearing fine. Okay.
I'd actually like to begin with a Purim in yesterday's Parsha. The Purim says the word V'nishma appears 3 times in the Kisvei HaKodesh. One of them is Nasa V'nishma. The pasuk in yesterday's Kriya is V'nishma Kolo B'vo Al HaKodesh. And the third one is V'nishma Piskam HaMelech. So the Purim says V'nishma Kolo by the Me'il is Avoda. Nasa V'nishma is Torah. V'nishma Piskam HaMelech is Megillah. And he says, it says by Megillah, V'nishma Piskam HaMelech Ki Rabahi. That's the most important of them all. And therefore, this is a remez or a basis for the halacha that Mikra Megillah is Mevatl Torah, is Mevatl Torah for Mikra Megillah, Mevatl Avoda for Mikra Megillah, because this is Ki Rabahi. Torah being Nasa V'nishma, Avoda being V'nishma Kolo, and the pasuk of V'nishma Piskam HaMelech Ki Rabahi, that's the most important. So my problem with that is, it sounds from him, if this is where the Torah gave us the remez for Mikra Megillah being the most important, that it has to be that particular message, which none of us would have thought is a very important message, V'nishma Piskam HaMelech Ki Rabahi, that Leos called Isor Beveso. And the reason I say that is because the Gemara says that letter, the people of the times themselves thought it was so ridiculous that the only reason we managed to survive is because they considered this the height of stupidity. Everybody knows that a king who writes this is a shaita, and therefore when he came out with the letters Lahashmid, Laharag, La'abed, Kol Yehudim, they figured that those letters can't be all that serious. Maybe he'll change his mind because anybody could write this letter, puts those letters into question. So how could we think, if this is where the Torah tells us, V'nishma Piskam HaMelech Ki Rabahi, how could that be I understand it's not only that pasuk, but if it's written in that pasuk, it sounds like that the basis or the chashivas of Mikra Megillah is that pasuk, and that doesn't seem to make any sense. It's not the idea of that pasuk. You would think maybe the Hatzolah, Kimu V'Kiblu. Most of us would have all different ways of I guess where the Gemara thinks the mitzvah should begin from would be what you think is important. But to think that this is the most important message of the Megillah, and for this we're not going to learn Torah, and for this we're not going to do Avodah, doesn't seem to make any sense. This morning I'd like to perhaps give an insight why this is really the most important message of the Megillah. In order to begin, I'd like to read sentences and see if we can get some serious understanding of what the sentences are. In Perek Aleph, we have Vashti makes a party, and Bayom HaShvi Ketov Leiv HaMelech Bayoyin. You can take a look. It's in Perek Aleph, Pasuk Yud. The king is good and intoxicated. He says to his 7 Sarisim HaMeshorsim to bring Vashti HaMalka in front of the king wearing a crown, to show the nations and the officials her beauty, because she was indeed very beautiful. And Vashti and the queen refuses, and the king is furious. His anger is raging in him. And then he says to the Chachamim, the Yudea Itim, which Chazal say he was searching and found the Chachamim of Klal Yisrael, wanted to know what to do, and they said since the Yom Shechar Beis HaMikdash they can't do. So then it's back on the table, and he puts the whole idea in front of 7. The Roe HaMelech HaYoshvim Rishonim B'Malchus, 7 leading advisors, what to do with the Malka Vashti. And then a Mamuchan jumps up and says, this is not only a sin against you, king, but this is an affront to all the Sorim and all the people all over the realm. Because the word will go out that women can disrespect their husbands. As the king said, to bring Vashti, and she didn't come. And all these, the Soros of Paras and Madai that hear about this behavior will disrespect their husbands. And if the king finds this to be a good idea, we should enact a rule that we get rid of Vashti and replace her, and the rule will be the most important rule, ki rabahi, that all women have to give respect to their husbands, the migodol v'akot. That's the storyline. So the first problem in the story, just to read simple story, he asked to bring Vashti Hamalka. The Torah, that's Pasuk Yud Aleph. Pasuk Yud Beis says Hamalka Vashti refused. He asked to bring Vashti Hamalka, and the Malka Vashti refused. When Haman and then there's a few more times it says what to do, they want to know what to do with the Malka Vashti. In Pasuk Tesvav, what to do with the Malka Vashti. So again, he wanted Vashti a Malka. Malka Vashti refuses. On the table is what to do with the Malka Vashti. Haman gets up and talks about Vashti Hamalka twice. The king said to bring Vashti Hamalka. The first time that the Vashti Hamalka did something in affront to all the king's men. So there's certainly an interesting subtle shift between Vashti Hamalka and Malka Vashti. It has to be saying something. Another thing that's very difficult, one would have thought that you would take when Haman gets up and says, Vashti didn't only do something to you, she did to everybody else. He should have taken a knife and a sword and chopped off Haman's head. There's no greater insult to the king that said, listen, it's not only did she do something to you, but she did something to everybody. She's a married b'malchus. You're a nice guy, but you're just a husband. So what kind of a shagas that you're equating what she did to the king to what she did to everybody else? To everybody, it makes no sense. Haman seems to say the most ridiculous thing, and it's a tremendous insult to the king, seeming insult. The first place he looked for a solution, he went to find the Chachamim that Yoidei Ha'itim. He's looking for the Jewish Chachamim, the Sanhedrin. Now, this is a capital case. Is he looking for the ones that are experts in criminal law? No. Who's he looking for? He's looking for the ones that set the calendar. Chazal say he's looking for the tribe of Yisachar. It's very difficult to understand. What's he looking for the tribe of Yisachar for? And then, of course, the problem here is that the Gemara says that what happened, why did she not come in? She was very comfortable with this Vashti. And the Gemara says because she had saras. Number one, she never heard of foundation. She runs the whole world, and a woman doesn't know about makeup and foundation, how you hide blemishes. Number two, the other mandam in the Gemara says that she had a tail. What? HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a nes only when there's a need, the Rambam says. To that your face breaks out with eczema or breaks out with psoras is a possibility. But a tail is a nes min hashemayim. The person goes to sleep and doesn't have a tail, wakes up with a tail. That's an unbelievable. What was the reason for that? Why should Hashem do that? Hashem doesn't. The Rambam says a rule. He doesn't do miracles to show his omnipotence. He does miracles for a need. You don't want her to come, she won't come. What's wrong with the fact that that her face has a sore on it? Whatever the reason is. It makes no sense. What is this Mandomer saying? Furthermore, all of a sudden, she's a smart woman. She's the queen of the whole world, basically. Why is she making a whole issue here? She didn't want to come because she doesn't look good. So why is she attacking her husband? You drunken bum. The stable keeper in my grandfather's horses could drink you under the table. I mean, it's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense why she should say that. How do Chazal know she said that? That's the other question. The whole discussion makes no sense. She's uncomfortable with the way she looks. People do have eruptions of skin diseases, and that's what happened. There was an eruption. Doesn't make her not a beautiful woman. Why is she making a whole war over here? While we're talking about it, which is a little bit unbelievable also, the Gemara says that with Shabbos, Yom HaShvi, because it doesn't take 7 days for a guy to get drunk. And then the Gemara says like this, look at the difference what we do on Shabbos and what they do. Shabbos, by us, we eat and drink and do Zmiris, Siris, V'Shishbachas, and Divrei Torah. And what do Goyim do when they get drunk? They eat and drink. And what happens then? Modai girls are pretty. These girls are more pretty. I mamish don't know what the Gemara is talking about. Is this Shabbos for a guy or it's Tuesday for a guy? Is there anybody in their house who sings Tuesday night by us, Zmiris? Is there anybody that insists that the child say a Dvar Torah Tuesday night? For the Goyim, it's Tuesday. It's not Shabbos. Makes no sense. And the other Mandomer says, why did it happen on Shabbos that she should come naked? Because she was Poishit. Benos Yisrael made them naked on Shabbos. It's not Shabbos for her. For Vashti, it's Tuesday. What is the Gemara talking about? The whole story, the Gemara, and this final edict, this is the whole reason, this is the whole Chashivas in the Megillah. What is going on over here? In order to begin, I think we're going to have some really incredible life lessons and Yesodis and Yiddishkeit, and also really a very interesting view, I think, on contemporary society. Normally, a king is a king, and he marries a queen, she's his subject. Or the opposite, in England. The queen is Queen Elizabeth, her husband is her subject, he's the prince consort. Here we have a different model. We have a queen who inherited a dynasty. She's a sovereign in her own right. And he's a sovereign because of however people become sovereigns, through wars or through elevating themselves. We have two sovereigns. We had that model in European history too, when William of Orange marries Mary of Scotland. That's also two sovereigns, two co-sovereigns. Ein shnei malachim mishtamshim b'keser echad. How do two sovereigns function together? There's only one possible way that two sovereigns could even have any way of living, working at all together, is to use, there's a husband-wife relationship. And the way this could perhaps work is a husband-wife relationship, so there'll be in protocol first, who you listen to, however, it could maybe work in a husband-wife relationship. Achashverosh is saying here to Vashti to come not as a subject, as a husband is telling his wife. He's asking to bring his wife, tell her to please come. He's not ordering her, she's not his subject. She cannot be ordered around. And all of a sudden, she takes great umbrage here, and that's why he has to bring Vashti, who happens to be the queen. But all of a sudden, she refuses Vatamoy, not Vashti, Hamalka, means the queen refuses. He wants his wife to come, and the queen refuses. Why did the queen refuse? The Gemara tells us that she was not uncomfortable about coming naked. In fact, that was the whole idea. She was Shneim Lidvar Aver. She had no discomfort, and all of a sudden she's rebelling. I'm not coming. And not only that, she lets him have it. You drunken bum. The teretz here is she got saras in her body. She got a message from God. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin that a Jew has a dream and he sees Bamosot Saras Yitzapel Malchus. Saras is a sign of Malchus. You have to be a pretty sophisticated, knowledgeable person. And one man says she was that, and she understood Malchus, which means the Malchus in her, your queen. He's trying here not to ask you to do something as a wife, but what he's trying to do over here is through the husband-wife relationship, he's going to absorb your Malchus into his Malchus, because he will use this relationship under the guise of husband and wife to eventually make you his subject. That's what the message she was getting by Saras. Of course she knew she could cover it. It has nothing at all to do with that. It has to do with there's a message, Mina Shomayim, you are a queen. And he is going against the queen. And if you don't know that message, because you don't know enough about Chazal, there's another message. A tail. You're a tail. The Torah says there's a Rosh V'lo Zonov. And therefore the growing of a tail was not that she didn't look nice, but an idea of a tail is if you do this, you're a tail. And you're not supposed to be a tail. You are a queen, you're a head, you're not a tail. Which means, Min HaShamayim, they gave her two indications here. That's a machlokes in the Gemara. Two different ways. Either they gave her sophisticated understanding. She could easily cover it up with foundation. They gave her messages. He's trying to swallow up your kingship. And the other message, going to the other man number, you're a tail. It had nothing, and that's the only reason she refused, and that's why she lets him have it. You're drunken bum. You think you're more king than me. The subjects of my grandfather, who were the stable keepers, were greater than you. And you're trying to be my king? They could drink you under the table. And therefore you can't be my king. She's rebelling here as Malka. Her refusal is Malka. She understands he's trying to take her over. Now how do we know he was trying to take her over? Good, she got this message. So it could be Hashem went into the recesses of his mind. But the emissaries, we know this from what came out of his mouth. She didn't hear it. The party is going on. And the Modai say, our girl's nicer. The others say, theirs nicer. Achsrei's, mine is the nicest. Comes along, they say, bring her here naked. How come he didn't, as drunk as he is, he should have taken out a sword and killed every one of the people sitting there. You're telling me to bring my wife out naked? She wants to do it, it's something else. But you can't tell a king, bring my wife out naked. He should have reacted to that. So listen to what the discussion in the Gemara is. We say, the Mud said ours, the Parah says theirs is nicer. The king says like this, Kli shani mishtamish ba, that's the best of all. That's the most beautiful of all. They heard their king say, she's not a human being, she's an object. She's my object. That means out of his mouth already, they heard him say that we're not co-sovereigns, she's my object. And therefore they had no problem. She's an object, a piece of art. She's your picture, bring her out. She's your object. Now, she didn't hear that, but the Rebbeinu Shloim made him miracles that what he said in front of his drinking buddies, she got that same message. So his whole objective over here, he's already dealing with her not as a human being, but as a object. And an object means that not only she'll be my subject, as my subject, I'm going to make her into an object. That's his agenda over here. And that came out of his mouth. Chazal are telling us that was her refusal because the messages got to her either through tsaras or through a tail. And therefore, it's vatamoin hamalka vashti. This had nothing to do with the way she looks. This is reacting directly to his order. He did it in a very smart way. He's not going to make it obvious. Come, honey, please here. And therefore, doing that way, he felt eventually he'll be able to put her in her place as a wife, and then he will absorb her sovereignty into his sovereignty. Now, by the way, we begin to understand what the Gemara is talking about. Shabbos, he's drunk. Shabbos. And therefore, we say, Divrei Shiur Shishbachas. You know what they go on over there? They talk about which girls are not. What kind of Mishra? It's Tuesday for them. That's not what's saying over here at all. The Pshat in the Gemara is like this. Why do we celebrate a meal on Shabbos? So Shiltas the Rabachai Gon says, because Shabbos is celebrating the creation of the world. What does it mean Hashem created the world? What are you celebrating then? The world's completed. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a country. He has a constituency. It's his malchus. Yismechu b'malachuscha shomrei Shabbos. The word is a mishundig thing the Gemara is saying here. We're not comparing Shmira Shabbos to a Jew and a Goy, because for us it's like, for them it's Tuesday. We're comparing a party to establish coronation, a party to establish Malchus. The Malchus of Klal Yisrael is, when there's a Malchus, what do? We get together and figure out how we can become greater human beings, what our moral compass should be, how to develop ourselves. Goyim, what do? When they're celebrating their Malchus, they're now going to figure out depravity. And I said, this is one of the most relevant messages today. Now, I grew up in the 40s in the United States. And, all the kind of behaviors today that are mitzvahs, legalized, 7 states, 10 states, it wasn't going on. Well, how come there's been this huge, in the last few years, this most unbelievable escalation of all kind of depravity, all kind of perversions? It's, this is just, it started already in the 70s, the 80s, all the free speeches was all extended. When the generation before me, what free speech was finally extended to, free speech went to whether there's the right of boycott. Creating unions. Could you do secondary boycotts? Free speech. Today, free speech means all kind of pornography. In the 60s even, it was 5-4 decisions of the Supreme Court pornography. Today, it's a mitzvah. I mean, it's like, what changed? All of a sudden, people got work. No. When I grew up, there was a Cold War going on. The United States was engaged in trying to establish safety, security for the people. There'd been a Second World War, and people were worried, and afterwards Russia was still trying. For many, many years, there's a huge problem of how are we going to protect our people. A huge problem. Baruch Hashem, the Rebbeinu Shalom makes a nest. Russia goes out of business. There's no longer a Cold War. Now we have a safe and secure country, world power. Nobody can touch us. So now we have to get to the other business of a state. The business of a state is to legislate all kind of perversions, all kind of depravities, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. They're involved in preserving the Malchus. That's the definition of a Malchus. A Malchus is to create a state where you can do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anybody. That's the whole focus of the country today. Because, thank God, we're not focusing we already are not afraid of Ishus Reu Chaim below. We're not afraid anyone's going to put us out of business, and therefore now let's do what a state really has to do and figure out how to legalize, legislate all kind of perversions, all kind of impossible behaviors, all kind of licentiousness. That's what's changed. What's changed is the state. They're raising it's the same process, but we were involved 50 years ago in making sure the basis of the state has to be safety and security. That's the first goal. But after you have safety and security, then you have to do with the running, and therefore we need rules to legislate and legalize all kind of perversions. That's exactly and that's what the Gemara is saying. Thank God there's one that Achashverosh that has Melech Bekippah. There's a whole world now. Now let's talk about licentiousness. Jews, when there's a state, Kadosh Baruch Hu state, that's when we figure out how to create a standard of morality, how to learn Torah. That's what's being compared. We're not comparing Shabbos to the Jew. It makes no sense. We're comparing the coronation, this establishment of a Torah state, as opposed to a secular state. A secular state senses its agenda, and raising the etra is to create all kind of, it's not just to create an opportunity, it's to legalize and legislate anything you want to do. And make that perfectly. The only thing we have to make sure it doesn't step on people. And that's exactly what's happening in America. First, we're not afraid of enemies from outside. More or less, the crime is under control, and therefore let's get down to the next business of a state. How can we heighten our pleasures, our depravities? That's exactly what's going on here. I'm saying it's a function of a state now. It has to be. We have to make it into law, not the pshat that over here we're making it to law. That's what we're doing. We're creating laws to legalize this type of behavior. I'm sure everybody saw that. Last week there was a statistic that more than 50% of the births all across the United States of women under 30 are unmarried. They're not married, which means that, you understand, we've now created a state that there's no longer families even. I'm going to talk about why that's but it's like unbelievable. Besides all the other type behaviors, there's no longer families. Families are almost a thing of the past. It used to be, in certain poor societies, underclasses, they had a very high unmarried birth rate. We're talking about all through the United States. It means white, WASPs, it means everybody. Educated people, more than 50% of the people in the United States, women under the age of 30, give birth who are not the children that aren't married. That's the kind of things that the state is now, and of course there'll be support. We're going to have to make sure that these children are growing up in a one-house family. Is going to have to make sure we're going to probably have to increase their welfare and increase the privileges, etc., etc. Anyway, that's what the Gemara is saying. The Gemara is talking here about the establishment of a state, and that's the raising the etra of a state. She is refusing this not because she doesn't look good. She's refusing because she understands that he's trying to usurp her sovereignty. He's trying to absorb the sovereignty. Now Achashverosh wants to know what to do here. He's very concerned that it shouldn't look that way. This is a husband-wife issue. Well, let's get a hold of the biggest world-class experts, the Chachmei Yisrael. The Chachmei Yisrael who set the calendar. What is the Jewish calendar set on? The moon. The moon is the one thing which regulates women's bodies. Those who understand the moon the best are the ones that have the greatest understanding of women. And therefore, the whole notion of he's not looking for criminals. He's not going to make this. He can't. He's not going to claim that she's a moredis b'malchus. She can't. She's her own sovereign. It's how am I going to deal with a wife? And the ones you have to go to is Minei Yisachar, Yedei Bina Litim, because they set the calendar. They understand the lunar system. They're sensitive to that. I mean, Bina means you're maven dover mitoich dover, so it means that they're really sensitive to all the depth and the sensitivities of women as well, and therefore that's what he's looking for. Comes along Haman, and he understands the whole issue here. He goes, our question was, wait, crazy? She's a Mored B'Malchus, and you're saying she's insulting everybody else. No. He calls her Vashti Amalka. It's Vashti. It's not about the Malka. The king can't afford and doesn't want that it should be looked like Mor B'Malchus, because she's not a Moiredis B'Malchus. He has no right to give her an order. She's not his subject. She's only his wife, and that's what Haman astutely picks up. But you know what, King? Normally, person has a wife, you figure out how to do it. But here, this is a husband-wife will undermine every single marriage in the world. Therefore, we need to react. That's what he's saying. And no one takes insult, because that's the way Achashverosh has portrayed it, and his only basis to discipline her or whatever is if there's an implication in family relations. It has nothing to do with subject-sovereign relationship. Then he comes up with the eights. Let us put this law that every wife has to give kavod to her husband. And they say this is shaitan. Everybody knows this. Pasha. And this is the most important pasuk in the Megillah, when the people who were living there hold them as shaitan. The pshat's like this. The Rambam actually writes that a woman is supposed to look at her husband Kisar Omelech Hamahalechas B'Taivas Libo, and she gives him all the whims of his heart, and whatever he dislikes, she distances she distances from him. So that's for sure the definition of what it should be. So why is this foolish? The teretz is to make that a rule is foolish. There's a halacha that precedes that in the Rambam, and the way that halacha this in Hilchos Ishus, Perek Tezvav, Halacha Yud Tes. But let me now tell you what Halacha Yud Ches says. Yud Ches says it starts with Tzivu Chachamim Al Habal, that he has to be Mechabda Ishto Yoser Migufa. He has to give her respect more than himself. The Oy Havola Kegufo, and according to whatever he can afford, he has to spend on her. And then he has to deal with her, never tell her what to do, just put things down on the table. Which means you have to earn that. What the Rambam is saying, you have to earn that. To legislate that that's control. That's demeaning somebody. It's stupid to even do that. If you earn it, it's a reality. You don't earn it, it's not. The Torah here is telling us Nishma Piskam HaMelech means HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Of course this is the Piskam, and it's the most important message in the world. But it's not something that could be legislated. It has to be earned. If the husband deals with his wife like this, then the wife will act that way. But to say that you can tell her what to do, and she must respect you, and you speak her language, is stupid. You can't do that. That's a war. That's just like you have a war. That's the opposite of shalom bayis. That's a huge war. Why is this the most important message in the Megillah? This is, I think, and here the way we're reading, this is the story. We just went through the storyline. So the storyline is that the lack of shalom bayis that she did, this is going to be all through the country, and it's going to undermine our entire fabric of our society. Why is this the whole yesod of Yiddishkeit? I'll tell you an interesting story about myself. About 5 years ago, I was starting to look for shidduchim for my kids. And I looked around. I knew I'd already been here about 13 years in Miami already. And I'm looking around, close to a lot of people. And I made a very interesting observation that made a huge question on me. There was some very frum people, B'nai Torah, Talmidei Chacham. I wasn't interested. I don't think the kids had the type of midas. There were some fryer people, Balei Tshuva, that the kids were, I would have been happy. And then I had a kasha like this. I woke up one morning with the following kasha. I actually believe that Torah and mitzvahs make you a better person. I mamish believe 100% that the whole vort is that's mashlim the person. The kids didn't go to a day school. The kids didn't keep kosher, didn't do other things at home. And these kids are kids that I would feel, and their parents didn't do anything. The kids are now from. They became Balei Tshuva. They sent them to a day school. These are kids, but they can't be, where could they have better character than kids that grew up from, kids that did, families that did Torah mitzvahs? How could it be? I was bothered myself. Why was it not, to me, absolutely clear that based on everything I believe in, that a person who doesn't keep Torah and mitzvahs is less of a human being. He's not developed the sensitivity and the midas toivus. And here's people that grew up totally fried. And the question bothered me. I had one family here in particular that I would have been very happy to be meshadach with them. I was actually makar of the parents. I mean, today, at that time, the mother already covered her hair. They didn't have a child at that age. But I asked myself, if they would have had a child, I would have been happy. How could it be? He grew up. Let me tell you the way he grew up. When he graduated university, one of the top universities in the United States, and he got married, his mother said, I didn't send you to that university to marry a Jewish girl. So you understand how far the parents were. If they would have had a child, I would have been happier to be meshadach with many of the Rabbanim I knew. And I didn't understand myself, and it was a real kasha to me. And I'll tell you what I think is the right answer. At least for me, it's the right answer. One day I'm talking to this person, and he tells me, you know what we used to do in the summer? There's 4 siblings. What they used to do in the summer is the family went on a family trip. The father was a professional. He closed his office, his practice for 5-6 weeks, and the family went on a trip. And by the way, it wasn't like today. You go on a trip in a van, so there's 3 rows, and the kids in the back row have one television there, and the second this, and everybody has a Game Boy, and they were in a car, all 4 kids sitting next to each other, and believe they didn't have Game Boys, nothing, and they got along for 4 or 5 weeks. There was no fighting. I mean, we know that's not a small accomplishment. Usually you take the kids down from Baltimore to Washington, they're already fighting before you get to Washington. And this 4 weeks, they traveled around the country every year, and it was an unbelievable family trip. So I realized that he's telling me that Mesiach Lefituma one day. Then I realized there's only one way that could possibly be. There's a tremendous shalom bayis. Shalom bayis doesn't only mean the parents get along. It means shalom bayis, as Rashi says, b'nei beso. It means there's a whole feeling in the house. Parents respect each other, and And then I realized one thing. Shalom bayis means the Shem Hashem is around you 24/7. You send your kid to yeshiva, you send them to day school, you sit and learn a few hours a day. And the rest of the time at night he's in this home where there's no shalom bayis. That's a home which is, there's mitzvahs you do during the day in school, but there's no shechina. You're not living around the shechina. Your environment is 2 selfish people, your parents, jockeying for position control, and that filters down to the siblings also. Yeah, they do mitzvahs, but there's no God. There's really no Rebbeinu Shalom. There's no Shalom. Shmoi Shal Kodesh Baruch Hu is Shalom. What I have found, now of course, if you find B'nai Torah with Shalom plus this, then you have the top. You can't be better than that. But between the two, if you have a family of Shalom Bayis or a family of Frum that doesn't have Shalom Bayis, and Shalom Bayis, I don't mean that are not warring with each other, but there's not really respect for there's not real Shalom, harmony in the family, you're going to find that the character of the children in the Shalom Bayis family is a higher level of character and development, more shleimus Adam, than in the family which is observant. Even Frum, I don't mean just, modern, seriously observant. Shalom is, and you're 24/7. You're it's like being in the base medrash 24/7. And that for sure worked for the people I know here in the community. Maybe there's other truths and from other places. But a Shalom Bayis child will have midas toivus. That's because he's living among, or she's living in the presence of the Shekhinah. She's growing up. It's like sending Shmuel HaNavi to the Beis HaMikdash. That's what it is when there's Shalom Bayis. How could have Shalom Bayis and not do mitzvahs? Because the great-grandparents were Shomrei mitzvahs and they had Shalom Bayis. So as they got to America, they started giving up some of the practices. But the Shalom Bayis, whatever, if they kept the Shalom Bayis, and there was an enormous sense of growing up in a holy place. When there's no Shalom Bayis, our homes are not holy. They're devoid of holiness. So then, what kind of effect can a mitzvah and midas from mitzvahs and learning? It does some good too. I don't say no, but you're missing the whole mitzvahs of the environment and the kedusha. The sholem bayis is the yesod of kedusha and tahara in a Jewish community, in a Jewish home. Not shmiras hamitzvahs. Is not the foundation. Shmiras hamitzvahs goes beyond that, of course. So between the two, I think you'll find, this is something I'll leave out. I would like to actually hear someone to think about this later. If the people that you know, whether it's the same observation that I'm making, the more sholem bayis, the better midas tovus of the children, to real sholem bayis. And if you have both, there's nothing like that. But if you only have one, you have people that are frum, but there's no sholem bayis, the children, in my opinion, are nowhere near as good as the children sholem bayis. And I think, by the way, the answer, his mother said, I didn't send you to this university to marry a Jewish girl. So how come he married a Jewish girl? I mean, there was nothing in the house. You hear what I'm saying? Nothing in the house. Not Yom Kippur, nothing in the house. The pshat is, when there's sholem bayis, he couldn't find any other girl with the character other than a Jewish girl. She shot herself in the foot by bringing a house with so much kedusha. He was looking for somebody else. So Baruch Hashem, he had found the Jewish girl. Because where else can you find that? Today, of course, she covers her hair, and the kids they're tzaddikim. But it's the yesod here of the whole Megillah, our nitzachan over our annihilation, and also the hachana for, first of all, it's the hachana for one thing. Binyan Beis HaMikdash for sure. You have to have a Mikdash Mad. That's the Iker Yesod here. And the Mikdash Mad is our homes, and that is Sholem Bayis. This is the most important pasuk in the Megillah. The most important pasuk. And that's why they're Misakin Mishpacha. It's a family thing. It's the creative sense of Sholem Bayis. The other thing is, as we spoke last year, is that the taka not to want to be misboiled. The what's his boilus in English? Intermarriage. It teaches that if you grow up when there's sholem bayis, that's really the yesod of anti-intermarriage. That makes a person holy. That's the ikar vort of the Megillah. The ikar tachlis of the Megillah is this pasuk. That everybody should be, and it's not something that can be legislated. But the Rambam says, it's not a halacha you have to do. The husband has to treat the wife a certain way, and then that will be the reality. And it's a big obligation on us, especially today. We know there's so many children at risk. It has, in my opinion, the main problem with our children is because there's no sholem bayis in our homes. All we're doing is doing the mitzvahs. We have all this frum. We're doing all the frum behaviors, but we don't really have sholem bayis. Sholem bayis you can't have because you behave a certain way. Sholem bayis means you have to have developed your character. You have to be a developed human being. How you speak to somebody else, the kind of respect you have for somebody else. Baruch Hashem, we do mitzvahs too, but as we know, we don't have to look too far to see that there's no correlation between our children, or there's a small correlation between our children being on the derech or chas v'sholom off the derech, because of how frum we are, and it's how much sholem bayis. The child, he belongs. He's not selfish. He's not surrounded by selfish behavior. He's surrounded by people respecting, making each other feeling good. If you have that, then Mitzvah Shem, it'll be a tremendous growth personally, a tremendous achana for Mitzvah Shem L'Shana Bab Yerushalayim Habnuya. That builds the Beis HaMikdash. Purim is we're celebrating the hachana for Binyan Beis, for coming back to Eretz Yisrael, Binyan Beis HaMikdash, and the Navi even defines that as Od Yishama Bar Yehu, the holy families, holy marriages. You want to know what the Geula is? Holy families, holy marriages. That's the way you can see a Geula, that in every single home will be a Migdash Mal. You'll be Bona Echad Mechor V'S Yerushalayim. That requires sholem bayis. And Shalom Bayis requires dealing with somebody. The Rambam tells us with a huge amount of respect, and it starts with the husband. That's where the Rambam puts the halach. It starts with the husband. Respect. That's where it starts from. After that, ava. After that, being generous. And the way we speak should never tell a wife what to do. It's benachas. The word nachas means you put the idea down on the table. You don't give an order. It's not a pekudah, because that already creates a tension and who's in control. It's not me berosh. The word nachas in Hebrew doesn't mean to talk calmly. The word nachas means noch. Put the idea down. You don't, and therefore she doesn't listen. She hasn't done anything personal. It's not you're telling her. You're putting the idea down. When an idea is down on the table, you put it down in a way that hopefully she'll find it. She'll be motivated to do it. But the idea should be down. It's not about controlling. We have to. The Gemara says we have to speak b'nichusa to our wives. Nichusa means we put the words down on the table. When something is down, the wife does not feel controlled. You're giving her an idea. If she doesn't do it, you don't take it personally because you put the idea down. You have to put it down in a way that she should be motivated to do it, but it's never personal. If we do that, then we will be kasar, umelech hamahalech b'taivas liba, with our whims of our heart, and she will be totally buy into that. And then our children will be that too. Children that grow up in a warm, loving, unselfish parents that are respecting each other are going to be children that are going to have all the midas tovas we want. And then, of course, the siyas mitzvahs will even enhance that. But the foundation is the shalom bayis. That's putting the shame of Hashem. And the author of this sefer is Divrei Shalom ve'emes. It says v'nechtam. V'nichta b'shem hamelech v'nichta b'shem hamelech is Shmoi shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shalom. V'nechta in the Chatabas hamelech, the Chaysam hamelech, that's Chaysam shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu is emes, and the Megillah ends off Divrei Shalom v'emes. It's signed. The Megillah is signed by Divrei Shalom v'emes. That's the whole message here. We need Shalom. We want to not become Goyim. We want to come back to Eretz Yisrael. We need Shalom. Shalom means and the whole story here is, the yesod of the story is how we have to deal with our homes, how we have to deal with our wives. To make it a rule, legislate, is a disaster. A shaita does that. But to earn it, that's the whole goal and the whole tachlis. The Shana Bo should be in Yerushalayim Habnuya. Any questions?
I'm muted until you can hear us, right?
Yeah, I hear you perfect.
Okay, so
listen, I just want to say one thing. I only gave this because I didn't see one woman in the crowd.
Well, actually, there is my wife here. I brought my wife. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. At least, if she heard it, then maybe you'll feel more driven to fulfill it.
How come Shmiras mitzvahs did not give someone the midas tovas that Christian is looking for?
Can somebody? I don't know why I'm not picking. I don't hear that.
He's going to come around a little far from there.
No, I did not say that Shmiras HaMitzvahs did not improve, but I say the foundation, the yesod is the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even with the mitzvahs, the yesod is the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the ikar connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in our presence. Nobody would have a kashir if you do mitzvahs anoshim melumoda. It's not going to improve your character. No one, with that we all know. Well, when there's no HaKadosh Baruch Hu in your life, the mitzvahs are maybe one step better than mitzvahs. We are regulating our behavior, and Hashem told us to, but there's no real shaychus to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom is what's our real shaykhus is Shalom Bayis. Shalom Bayis means we're surrounded. I'm not chas v'shalom. I wasn't advocating to do less mitzvahs. I was just saying that doing mitzvahs without Shalom Bayis will create kids at risk, will create kids that you don't want your daughter to marry either, and you don't want your son to marry because they don't have the midas. They went to school, the best kid in the school. He's selfish. How many people we know that are selfish? That because somebody wears a frock or he has a job as a Rav that doesn't mean it's not attesting to his not being selfish and self-centered. So it's not a small chesar, not a small mum over here.
I think that you have to take it to the next level, and that problem that you said is the way in which Baruch Hu deals with us. We don't get to legislate stuff. We do it because he's Mashiach does. That's the whole difference.
I'm not. You can't legislate.
Because he's legislating it, then you don't have a relationship with him.
You can't. You're. That's what. Are you saying?
The right.
That's the point. The point of the whole deal is to show the relationship not because he legislates mitzvahs, but because he does everything for us in the background. That's how we have a relationship with him.
Right. That's what. It's Anoichi Hashem Elokecha Asher Hotzeisecha Me'eretz Mitzrayim.
Right. That's what they appreciated from this story when they realized that's what the prejudice.
Right.
Then they changed their whole relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is a paradigm for the whole thing.
Right. You say our whole relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is grounded on the fact that it was not legislated.
Because you feel it's legislated it, and
right.
you're forced to do it,
right.
Then it's no relationship. And
that's right.
That's it. It's not a second.
That's right. Good. Agreed.
So the Nishma Piska HaMelech means the reason why it's so important us in the Megillah is because even though there was being legislated, you have to understand the message outside of the legislation. Is that the idea? Because that's also legislation.
What's the idea of Nishma Piska HaMelech? Why is it so pivotal
The Megillah, Nishma Piskam HaMelech is saying that this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, his main message is that we have to have Shalom Bayis. That's Hashem's main message. We need Shalom Bayis. This is Piskam HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we need Shalom. What will solve all our problems is our sense of bringing Hashem's presence, and the way we bring His presence here is by having Shalom Bayis. I'm not sure
just because the Piskam HaMelech is legislation, so you're saying to do it, the Shalom Bayis is because you want it, not because it's being legislated.
By the way, that's right. It means the goal, this is the goal, but it has to be something that's built and developed, for sure. In fact, if you really think the Nishma Piskam HaMelech means it will be heard. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It means it will be heard. It's like a result. It should be heard. It should become a reality. That's what the word Nishma means. It's not telling people to do something. It means it should be heard. It means it should be understood. It's a nifal. It's not. He's not telling you to do it. He wants it. This should become understood.
Second diagram of this receiving Chachamim, that's not legislation by our Chachamim. The Chensut Chachamim, that's language around Chachamim, they commanded respect.
Yeah, but it's not. It means that the Chachamim are telling you, or telling my wife, telling me what I should do for my wife. But it's the Chachamim, by the way. The Chachamim means a Chacham doesn't really give an order. A Chacham really gives you the wisdom, the understanding. At Sivui the Chachamim is not. You don't have to listen to a Chacham. You have to understand his message. As Rashi says on the pasuk. Shalavicha v'yageitcha zekeinecha v'yomrulach. So Rashi says Shalavicha is Nevi'im, zekeinecha is Chachamim. And it's really the difference between a father and a grandfather also. A father has to give an order. A Navi gives an order. You're mechuyev to listen to his order. Right? He doesn't have to be wise. And that's what chinuch is. The father is telling you what you have to do. Your grandfather doesn't tell you what to do. Your grandfather tells you what the benefit of his wisdom. This makes sense. You don't have to listen to your grandfather. And if he's a smart grandfather, he doesn't tell you what to do. He gives you information. That's what a chacham is. A chacham is giving us information. It's the same way I was saying it before, like with your wife, you put it down on the table. You put it down on the table. But there's no din to listen to a chacham. There's a mitzvah to listen to a navi. A chacham is just telling you this is what's right, and you're doing it because it's right. And that's
means that chacham, they just told us as opposition.
No, the Chachamim are telling you, they are pushing you to do it. No, I don't say they're not pushing you to do it. Of course they're telling you to do it, because they're letting you know how important it is. You better do this. You want this, you have to do it. But the reason I'll do it at the end is because I understand why I'm doing it, not because they told me to do it. That's what I'm saying. That's why he what did Tzivu Chachamim? The Torah is Mitzaver. What do you mean? It's with Tzivu Chachamim, not Tzivu Chachamim. It means that Tzivu Chachamim means that just shows how much they're pushing. There's a suggestion, but at the end of the day, if it's the Chacham, the reason I do it is because I understand what I got the understanding. Not that I have to listen. Din Elof Tishmon, I have to listen to a Navi. I don't have to listen to a Chacham.
Here there is that they want Yisachar. Why do they want Yisachar? So Rebbe is saying that Yisachar understood the moon. Right?
What was this? I'm sorry, I don't hear that.
Yisachar. Why do you not want Yisachar?
The
Rebbe is saying Yisachar because of the moon. Yisachar also, Yisachar in the unisolar calendar. It's much more, it's the same Malachim. They need to understand when you have the sun and you have the moon, how do you make them both work out?
Right.
They're the experts that Amaphir needed to figure out the Malachim.
100%. I didn't get it. I mean, that's really the Gemara, that the moon is the first one who brings up Ein Shnei Malachim Mishtamshim B'Keser Echad. Yeah, 100%. Who are you, by the way?
That was the Master chapter was the last question.
Oh.
So that's why I said we were lower. We're going to take down the big projection of the temple when we go one-on-one with Shiva on our headphones, and then take the converse that way. You're free to partake of the refreshments, take the farm, the seats. Not the farm, I don't have that many copies, but the CDs are please, and want to thank everybody for coming, and our program is good. Yeah, sure.
Another question for Shiur.
One more question.
Okay. So what was the ideal scenario that Vashti wanted? Vashti wanted Shnei Malachim B'Keser Echad?
No, Vashti did not want him. I mean, Vashti didn't want him to use the husband-wife relationship as a way of making her into his subject.
She wanted
No, I say she would have been okay if it would have not have been, if she wouldn't have gotten this message, and if Achashverosh would not have been motivated to make her his subject through manipulating the husband-wife relationship, then it could have lasted. I mean, she's a smart woman. She's she's running the whole world. She's a granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar. There's no problem here other than the fact that he wanted to manipulate and maneuver the husband-wife relationship as a way of objectifying her and to make her his subject.
And then he would be number one, and then we have number two.
No, I don't know what you mean. We're equal. The question is, in Hilchos husband-wife, so there's immediately the Shmaya. However, a husband-wife's relationship is not one controls the other. They have different areas of responsibilities. She's okay with that. She's okay with that. But Achashverosh is not okay with that. Achashverosh is insecure. He's worried about she's a real queen and he's not, and he's insecure, and therefore the only way he could be comfortable is by making her his subject. That there's nobody that's equal to him. That was his problem. I'm sorry. What's that? I'm sorry. I don't hear you. I'm sorry.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. So this was a Malchus issue, not a family issue with Achashverosh, right?
No. Right. Achashverosh was right, but he was his insecurities in his Malchus that he wanted to use the family issues as a way of strengthening his Malchus. Right. Right. No, you're right. That from Achashverosh's point of view, it was he made an appearance of a husband-wife relationship, but it wasn't husband-wife. It was his way of absorbing her malchus into his.
And until then, she was just as authoritative in the malchus in the reign as he was as him.
Yeah, they were both equal. Now, something they were both equal. It was an alliance. It was Mary of Scotland and William of Orange. So they're equal sovereigns, and it could actually work. And husband and wife, it's possible to work because just like every marriage it's possible to work. It's a lot of effort, but it's possible to work. The problem here is he wanted to use this as a way to destroy her place.
Thank you.
But your name is?
I think there may be something wrong with
Nelson, who was I just speaking to?
Just get the volume up.
Who was I just speaking to?
That was Kramer. I don't remember his first name. I did have one question. Remember you were saying that I understand the whole thing, but remember you saying that Vashti with foundation, basically, that the Tsaras would not have been a physical issue.
Of course.
So I understand that Tsaras could have been Malchus, but it's hard for me to understand what's the difference between one woman and the next woman. If they could all put on foundation, then they're all beautiful. But there's something about if you're just using makeup. I'm just having a hard time understanding that you could just put on makeup that makes you beautiful.
No. She's beautiful because she's beautiful, but there's a blemish, so it hides the blemish.
Her whole body has tsaras on it.
No, I don't think so. That's exactly what I'm saying. Her whole body didn't have tsaras. Of course, her whole body didn't have tsaras.
It was just a little bit of tsaras.
Yeah, one little piece of one little blotch, like whatever tsaras means. It was a grease.
Okay. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. How are you doing, Shlomo? How are we doing?
Beautiful
Shlomo, you're lucky your wife wasn't there. You better give her a call now. I miss you, honey.
One second, I'm not hearing well. I want to tell Rebbe just a quick experience on that, which is exactly what Rebbe said. When we were starting Shiur, my wife sat down